Yeah,
So
experience too. So
good. I think we're on point then.
all right. Well, we're going to be starting down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the map. Top of the blue Terran player we were just talking about. It is Ziggy.
In the top right as the red Protoss for Team Liquid, he is Harstem.
So when Ziggy inevitably capitalizes on the caster curse and 2-0s Harstem here, I just want to remind everyone that Ziggy is teamless. Teams, if you're looking to pick someone up. Roddy, if you're in the chat, I don't know. I don't know if, actually, I feel like Roddy's got a type. He's got a type of player that he likes going for.
Got a type of player.
Those young upstarts, yeah.
Well, you're not wrong. It is like he's trying to foster the up-and-coming talent, the guys who don't just show up, play a couple games, and go like, whatever, that are actually putting in the hours and looking to be better and better. So, I mean, maybe Ziggy would be a good pickup, but he's not Protoss. And I feel like Roddy's
does that matter?
Protoss biased.
That's also true. Roddy does really, really love his Protoss up-and-comers. But, I actually, for example, if Clem was not already on, a solid team and everything, I could see Roddy having picked up Clem or something. I think that would have actually made a total lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. For me, if, no one had picked up Clem and he was available for Roddy to pick up, though, I'd be like, okay, that's
Team
really
CG.
great for Team Roddy, but, someone should pick this kid up. Someone really, really good. Team Liquid should pick him up, and hey, look what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally called that, by the way, back when I had some advance notice because I was kind of talking about TLO about some things, but I was putting 2 and 2 together, and I was like,
wow, you just called out TLO as a leak. You just informed Team Liquid. You basically just reported it to 10,000 plus people that TLO is a leak.
No,
wow.
He was just like, we're going to be busy before Katowice, so I don't know if I can, I asked him for a coaching session basically, and I was like, oh, training camp with new people. It just makes a lot of sense for Clem and Harstem to be on Team Liquid, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think Team Liquid has always been one of those really, really cool teams where they don't just pick up players that are good or active or have a lot of promise. Team Liquid has an atmosphere about it, and they really do strive to pick up players that only fit that atmosphere. And I gotta actually say really quickly that Harstem doing a great job with this Adept opening and has managed to get the first cancel on the command center that we've seen all day from Adept opening.
Yeah, a bit of a delay. It's always annoying. Ziggy feeling comfortable in general against early pressure because he is opening up with Hellions. But keep in mind that while, they're great at defending this Adept, they do want to go across the map and join up with a medevac. So they don't want to stay behind here all day long. Harstem, with seeing the factory and the reactor, does have to keep in mind a proxy starport is a potential. It's not always the case, but it definitely happens, I would say 40% of the time, probably. Especially if you see they actually have 4 Hellions and not just 2.
Nice pick off on the Reaper. May not seem like a big deal, but if you do need a backup strategy and the medevac doesn't work out, then using the Reaper to knock the Stalker out of position in the wall can be kind of a nice little thing in your tool belt. And even just allowing the Reaper to knock the Stalkers around while the Hellions do damage can be nice, but not going to be able to do that anymore. The Hellions load up into the medevac. The pylon is coming down right as the Hellions start moving into that main base. Probes are pulled, and they're in a really, really nice clump right there. Ooh, not taking too much damage just yet. Only 4 workers. And hey, if Harstem gets a full cleanup on this medevac, that'd be the dream.
Wow, I really thought that last shot was going to go off on those 4 other probes. 8 probes would have been pretty good, but if he's going to be stuck at 4 because his medevac is injured and he has to find another spot to unload without being harassed, that's probably not going to happen. I don't know. Ziggy picking up a bit prematurely, choosing the chance at another attack over the one that was there. I'm not sure is going to work out, but they are going to be combined now with the Liberator, who's going to try and distract Harstem. Thing is, the Hellions don't really care about the 3rd Nexus. They can't do anything about the 3rd Nexus. So if they try and go through the natural, well, that looks to be clogged up as well. Well, maybe not, actually. It's a little bit late. Oh, the Hellions just go right on in.
Okay, well, now's going to be another opportunity to get some good damage done, but with only 2 of the Hellions left alive, that means they're not one-shotting workers. Still managed to get 4 in conjunction with the Liberator, but the Liberator also has a bit of an expense. The Starport being proxied has an expense, and there's no Starport units being produced at all right now. I don't really think Ziggy's going to be super happy with how that went.
Well, and it's actually interesting. Like, I think 8 overall for the Hellions is pretty good considering the medevac actually lived. The Liberator did at least trade out with 1 unit that is roughly the same cost of the Liberator, a Stalker. So, I don't know, it is definitely harder to call exactly who comes out ahead. I wouldn't be surprised if it is negligible, you know, like if we're like 3 minutes later, we're not even talking about this anymore type thing. But I also wouldn't be surprised if 3 minutes later, like there's clearly an imbalance of the supplies, you know? I think it's going to be more about the follow-up, like who has the better follow-up. Ziggy was going for a 3cc build very quickly behind this, so he didn't get the most amazing probe kills. He should have a very quick jump up in SCVs, especially if he feels so confident as to actually grab the 3rd CC as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Nice step off over there from Ziggy on the Observer, picks it off and waits a few seconds and loads up into the medevac and is going to try and get some additional damage done. And we'll see. He's not going to really be hitting with the drop during any timings. I mean, Stim is still pretty far away from pitching, so is combat shields and +1 weapons. But just using this drop to establish a 3rd base safely, making sure the Protoss player is staying at home, is going to be a nice little boon. But I already see some movement there from Harstem. He is super duper hyper aware of the potential for that drop to come in. There's no blink or anything, so these Stalkers should not in any world be able to get a snipe off on that medevac. But hey, it at least keeps those units at home.
So Harstem gets away with a pretty fast 3rd Nexus, but with Ziggy's pretty darn fast 3rd Command Center, there's only a 9-worker difference. Not too uncomfortable for the Terran. More worried about that army supply and the army type, but it looks like with all of the upgrades finishing for both parties, even if Harstem were to push out right now, I think Ziggy could muster up the defense.
Well, I think that theory is going to be tested right now, Zombie Grub, because we already have seen Harstem sending out a few units just to hit the Xel'Naga Watchtower to clear off any vision. And the War Prism's already set up with a lot of Zealots, even a couple of Archons or 2.
No, Ziggy's out of position. He's going to get his tank. He's not protecting his tanks.
He might be able to get the War Prism.
Oh, no, not enough Marines. Oh, this actually was a disaster. He was supposed to see this coming and then protect his tanks, pull the SCVs if necessary. Instead, he just runs into a 3-base attack that he was not positioned for. And I think he just loses from here.
Zombie Grub, StarCraft is a brutal game sometimes. It feels like you can have the tools you need, but sometimes if you miss out on where your wrench was, if you misplace your hammer, it doesn't matter. You can't build your IKEA furniture anymore. This is really, really brutal.
Yeah, jeez. I'm not saying that he would have held it no problem if everything was together, but I'm saying it would have been like a much better trade. Maybe he even keeps his 3rd CC like on location a little bit longer type thing. Instead, it was a boppening of 2 different armies. It was an army that together was okay and apart was really not okay. To Ziggy's credit, it was a very surprising attack. We don't see 3-base saturation right into charge Archon attack. You know, like I don't even know. Is there a faster way to explain that? Like I don't think so. So. It's so unfortunate. If Ziggy had a scouter, you know, put a Marine forward, it's a bit, it's a different game. He didn't die though. And now we have to talk about the other things that he might still have ahead of Harstem. Right now, that is just, you know what, it's like barely even upgrades. Harstem's on a double forge.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I also have to commend Harstem, like the way he also handled that attack was he didn't just move out with the entire army in one big F2A move. He was diligent and sent out like a Zealot or 2 and cleared out the Xel'Naga Watchtower and everything, and basically ensured that Ziggy was not going to have a lot of vision of everything coming his way. But now Ziggy is going to be catching Harstem a little bit off guard because the Zealot catches wind of this attack, but very last second. But no, looks like the whole army is sitting at that 3rd base, not the 4th.
Pretty brutal to have the Zealots warp in like this. There's a decent amount of reinforcements, but he's out burrowing the Woodamines right underneath the War Prism. Misses the opportunity to maybe collect that. And a lot of lost mining time and the complete loss of momentum. So Harstem, maybe there was a moment before he had more army, before he had his Colossus, before he had his upgrades. That moment has come and gone. Harstem now has everything lining up for another push, Colossus included, and Ziggy doesn't have a response. He doesn't have EMPs, he doesn't have Vikings. All he can try and do is get a good concave.
Yeah, it looks like Harstem might even hit just before Thermal Lance finishes up after warping in another round of these Zealots. And I'm not too sure that Ziggy has what he needs to deal with this. A couple of supply depots are going to be able to body block some of the Zealots, but Guardian Shield gets popped to help keep those Zealots alive for just a little bit longer. I mean, a nice flank of these Marines and Marauders coming in from the backside. Ziggy starting to pull some units together. The problem is the splash damage is just way too much now.
He actually ran into the Zealots and the Archon splash. He was, GG. I think he was dead no matter what. But the only thing that made it look even somewhat okay was that big concave around the supply depots, like you were saying. Once he lost that, it was actually pretty easy for Harstem to move in and win. Another brutal game. You know, that last series, a lot of brutal games to the Protoss. And now Harstem brings the brutal games to the Terran.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate there for Ziggy, but I mean, I think Harstem, he executed a lot of that stuff for that big Zealot Archon attack really, really well. And just, again, shutting down the map vision, catching Ziggy out of position and everything. It was a little bit of just unfortunate side for Ziggy and not having the vision, but Harstem, again, he actively made that happen. It wasn't just random happenstance.
Yeah, very much so. Like, yes, there's always a bit of luck involved in StarCraft, but at this point, we've really taken away a lot of luck from the games, and it is a lot more about what the players are forcing each other to do. I also think that that's probably a very difficult build to scout. Not that Ziggy was getting much scouting, not much map presence or anything like that. But if he did, like, I don't know what you think when you see Twilight Council, which you didn't actually see, but still, like, you saw Stalkers, if you assumed it was a blink opener, and then suddenly there's like a mask on a charge outs, and you're like, is this defensive? Is this offensive? Then you see 6 gases, and you're like, is this Colossus? Is it Archons? and then suddenly, by the time you figured it out, it's charge out Archon attacking you on your third base. They're attacking you on your third base. So, a tricky thing to bring out there. And Ziggy is just so slightly underprepared.
Yeah, I actually really, it's reminding me of something that I really like about Harstem, is that I feel as though Harstem, especially back in the day, and I think still to this day kind of plays this way, where he will come to a tournament and you'll see, 7, 8, 9 Protoss players at the event, and there'll be some standard meta that a lot of people like to do, or standard things that most Protoss players are trying to do. And Harstem will always come, and he doesn't go super far off the beaten path, but he always has these little deviations. He doesn't quite just walk on the exact same path that everyone else does. And I feel like I really appreciate that. He kind of just adds his own little mix, his own little twist to StarCraft, and definitely pays off well.
I think that sums up his playstyle really well. In the top right, it is the blue Terran, Ziggy.
And in the bottom left, we have the red Protoss player from Team Liquid. It is Harstem. And just to speak about how they're doing in the groups right now, Ziggy, I kind of mentioned this before with the whole, does last place still get paid out? But Ziggy is 0-4 right now, so I think even just getting that first map victory will probably mean a lot for him if he can manage to turn this game around. If you go down 0-6, Zombie Grub, I don't care how good of a player you are, there's going to be at least a little bit of a mental block in trying to play out that next series.
Right. Like, at that point, you are playing more for the other people to determine their seeding and where they place in the group, which, it's not necessarily a lot of motivation. You do want to win the matches, not just to place well in the group. You do also get paid for every match that you win, $125. So it's nice when that happens. But yeah, if you get totally blown out, I guess just not the performance that you would want. Harstem is looking to definitely get out of his group. You see a lot of fans saying captain, doing the 07 there. I like it. Harstem's just a fan favorite, and he's performing very well as a StarCraft player.
I mean, can you name many professional StarCraft players? I can maybe name like 4 that are not only top-notch, extremely competitive professional players, but they also are content producers and effective streamers, and also just entertaining personalities in general. Like, Harstem does it all.
He really does. I think we have more now than ever before. Really, like, even back in the golden era, right? Like, that was even more so where people were like, "No, I'm just a gamer. No, I just play." But now, we have Lambo being an awesome streamer. Hero Marine somehow streams all the time and is also one of the best pro gamers we have. Harstem, very obviously.
I'm
Did it
so
bop
sorry. It did like the flailing animation, but down the ramp, and it wasn't in the air at all. Sorry,
whenever they do that flailing animation, I think of Final Fantasy 9.
You know what?
Do you know why?
I haven't even played Final Fantasy 9, but I've seen you play Final Fantasy 9, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, all right, good. Like I'm not alone here.
And someone please clip that moment of the adept and send it to me. That will. The world has been a dark place lately, and that will just cheer me up any day.
All right, well, if that's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
Well, all right. So another 3cc build coming out here from Ziggy, but he's being really greedy this time. So last game, he went for that factory into Hellion drop, applied a little pressure, got a little scouting. Surprisingly not accurate scouting, considering what ended up happening, but yeah, got a little scouting. This game, he's like, well, I think Harstem won't attack me. And we've talked a little bit about how Harstem is mostly a macro player. So I am going to do the greediest thing you can, which is you don't get a factory and you get a fast 3rd CC. The factory is the ultimate catch-all defensive structure for the Terran. It really helps even in really, extreme scenarios because a tank has splash, it has high ground, all that good stuff. To go right into barracks is actually kind of insane, but I think he's going to get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, Harstem's not putting in on any signs that he's going to get hyper aggressive over here. And I mean, it's not even like he can go for a big blink stalker pressure play or anything. So Reaper pops on in. It does get picked off. So Harstem really wants to. He maybe has a little bit of time, like 40 seconds before he would have to worry about some kind of drop play or a Widow Mines or something. But yeah, he's just going to stay at home.
Mm-hmm. So there's no setup to be aggressive. The very opposite, in fact, only 2 gateways. Mm-hmm. So he will see this with the observer and kind of go like, you got me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's out of the game because he's also doing his own greedy thing. The same way that Ziggy is kind of perceiving Harstem as a macro player, a guy that you won't have to worry about except maybe a Widow Mine drop, which is not something you really worry about. He goes for a really fast 3rd Nexus. Ziggy is just doing the same thing to him, and even maybe a little bit more extreme. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's the Terran bias, but I'm like, well, yeah, he just, he matched you.
Yeah, I guess the question to me is going to be, when is it safe for Ziggy to land that 3rd CC down on the low ground and not really worry about, having to lose it or anything? Because right now you're kind of in that state as the Terran player where you say, all right, well, I have to leave this up in the high ground. I have to keep it in my main base in case there's an attack or something. But we can see there's nothing coming anytime in the near future.
That is a bit tricky. You don't actually want to set down that 3rd CC on location. You wait till you're saturated, and then basically is when you're like, okay, can I take that base on location? It would be so helpful if Ziggy knew that there was a 3rd base. It'd be so helpful to have a single Marine out, a single Liberator even out to see what's going on, because he should be trying to take that. Harstem has adapted his build slightly to accommodate for what he saw. Typically, he one forge with this style of play. He went right into double forge as soon as he saw it was 3 command center. I mean, we're still talking about a passive game, but it's a bit sucky for Ziggy that he doesn't just immediately get to his 3rd. He still has matched Harstem's macro quite well, only down 7 workers.
Yeah, which is fantastic for a Terran player versus a Protoss, so I don't think you'll be complaining about that. Temple Archives is being added on now for Harstem. Still never actually got a blink. It's scary to me as a Protoss player because I've had this happen, seen this happen so many times and had it happen, where the Protoss player goes for charge, they forego blink in the early stage of the game, and then it gets to the late game. And you're just kind of used to, especially after the last stage of the meta for PvT, you're just used to having blink from the early stages. And then your opponent starts adding on Liberators, or like the drop comes in and you're like, oh, I don't have blink. It's like 17 minutes into the game and I still don't have blink. I'm always a little bit wary about that stuff.
I know what you mean, yeah. I think there's an equivalent, but I can't think of it right now. But yeah, that is something that could happen as the game goes later and later and later. I thought maybe Harstem was doing what he's doing in this game because he saw it was fast 3rd CC, but he also might just like playing this way. Whenever he can not go for blink, he will. Very, very macro-oriented player, obviously. But we should see it eventually. First up, the robotics bay. Upgrades finishing. Ziggy was pushing out, but the warp prism pulls it back.
Oh, and I really like this. Dropping out 2 zealots over in the natural, which actually just buy time representing the reinforcements, and then sends the warp prism with the zealot into the main base. Oh, it does lose the warp prism, though. The reinforcements do catch Harstem off guard, and very quick stim up over there from the Marines as well to immediately get the damage done.
Yeah, it is really nice. Scan on the 4th base, sees the 4th base, and sees reinforcing zealots. I think one worry when that happens is that you've pulled yourself entirely out of position, so your 3rd is about to be bopped. Well, I think that told him that he doesn't have to worry about it. So he collects all of his army together. He's got a wall protecting his 3rd base against some zealots off the left side. And we are talking about a direct push, something the observer will see. Harstem's going into disruptors, which I love. But this is going to be a bit of an interesting engagement because we aren't accounting for blink. So unlike what Rail was doing earlier today.
Oh, big stim up over there from Ziggy, which ends up being not utilized at all. Kind of a little bit of a dancing back and forth. There are still 4 medevacs with a decent amount of energy left over. But just keep an eye on that kind of stuff because that does start to add up and it does force out a bit of time and passiveness from Ziggy until he heals up his army again.
Yeah, I understand it. It looked tempting. You saw the army, maybe even saw the upgrades were okay for you, but you realize, oh, force fields. Yeah, maybe not, maybe not.
Oh yeah, ramps, Protoss, since Wings of Liberty. I remember now.
Well,
10 years
honestly,
of this.
After 10 years, we're still trying to remember it.
Well, at least you guys have moved past the stage of like GSL Season 1 where it's like, okay, if I stim up my whole army up a ramp, let's see if it works.
Ooh, speaking of setting up an army up the ramp, Harstem goes up the ramp and finds a big old concave. So that's not going to work out super well.
Yeah, it goes ahead and force fields and says no chasey. But Ziggy is actually going for the Ghost upgrade as well, the EMP Shockwave, which increases the radius for those EMPs. Can do some really, really nice damage to Harstem's army. And I also want to note that Harstem did go for the Templar Archives before the Robotics Day, so we're showing signs that he maybe was going to go into High Templar, but it is just going to be useful for the Archons. We already have, like you said, those Disruptors mostly being used for Slash.
Oh, he's jumping on top of one of the Disruptors. That's a large portion of his army to try and do that, though. He only grabs 1, and that was like 8 units. I'm not really sure that was exactly what he wanted, but maybe it does take away the power of Harstem's push. Liberators pop out, but are actually not being used. Oh, 1 goes down immediately. An EMP hits a lot of those Zealots, but the bio was already overstimmed and forced to retreat.
Yeah, overall, we end up seeing that Harstem gets what seems like some better trades over there. I mean, a quarter of the army, like you were saying, for Ziggy, trying to trade out for 1 Disruptor, not ideal, but whoa, Harstem! Okay, that's a little bit of a scary moment. When you move through a choke point like that, and you have this moment where you say, well, they are coming to get me. And if I'm wrong, I cannot retreat from this. So Harstem just backs off, but he's going to find a couple of medevacs for free, which kind of get A-moved in over the edge. And Harstem's going to take some good trades here once again.
Ziggy needs to calm down and just recuperate here. I know he needs a 4th base, but he needs army. He needs to actually survive. He's down 40 army supply. He lost his Liberators. He has Ghosts, but those won't really help against the Disruptors, and he's going to be packed into a corner. Harstem is looking for the 2-0 right here, right now. And if he doesn't get it at this exact second, he's going to get 4th base, which means he's probably won the game anyways.
And there it is. GG. Harstem